They say journalism is dangerous, and some say if you are not controversial, you will not survive in the field. So today we're going to break that down. We're going to know the real truth about journalism today. So joining me today, we have a journalist, a very renowned journalist. He works with TVC News and he is a correspondent to Niger State. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Faiz. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Yes.
All right. His name is Bamaiyi Chenemi.
Yeah. Oh, you did better than the first time. It's Chenemi Bamaiyi. Yeah,
All
I
right.
get that a lot of times. Sometimes people find it difficult to pronounce it, but hey, we're here.
All right. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Faiz, for having me. Good job you're doing, by the way.
All right, thank you. So, I would like to ask you before we move further, what does journalism actually look like beyond our screen, beyond what is on TV?
All right. So journalism is basically research, in-depth research, and then reporting as well. Reporting is maybe the part of the last things that you do in journalism. Of course, I say part of because after reporting, there's still some other requirements like providing in-depth analysis, helping people to understand the news and what the implications are. And then, but before that time, you have to do research, you have to go to the field. And then, for my case, sometimes you have to have the guts and you have to have the minds to push uh, beyond the regular issues just to get something concrete. So I think it's pretty much that in summary.
Like they say, you need to have liver to enter that field. It's not for the weak. Okay, so can you give us an example, or is there something that actually happened that journalism made an impact in the society that made you feel proud to be in this field?
Oh yes, so many actually. My job as a journalist reporting from Niger State has been an incredible one because of the kind of stories that come out of Niger State. Niger State is a place that has been in the news in the last maybe 5 to 6 years for the wrong reason. There's been a lot of insecurity around, and that's what a lot of people outside Niger State get to hear, the insecurity part. There are other beautiful things, but it's quite unfortunate that insecurity has filled the airwaves. And because I report these issues, I need to have the guts a lot of times, and you need to report it. If you don't report it, nobody is going to hear about it. And sometimes, I mean, referring to your question now, if there are things that I've done that actually brought impact, sometimes it's when you report it that even the authorities get to know, because we have sources in journalism, and some of the sources are the people that live within these communities that have been attacked. All right, so sometimes they reach out to you directly before they even reach out to the authorities, because maybe one too many times their confidence in the authority has been lost. So they just reach out to you because they believe you can do something.
You are more reliable.
Yes.
The media is more reliable now.
Yeah, in fact, there's a particular day I was traveling and there was an attack in one of the communities, and then they reached out to me. I can't forget that day. And immediately I reached out to my organizations and said, look, this is what is happening. And the moment they began to scroll the news on the scroll bar on television, that was when the authorities saw it, and then they had to send reinforcements. It was so beautiful because it was before my eyes. It didn't take how long. Besides seeing jets flying, and I said, "Oh, this has definitely got to do with the report that we sent about and maybe 30 minutes or 45 minutes ago." And for me, it was a proud, just a journalistic moment for me.
Yes.
As a journalist. That's one. Should I share another?
Yes, if you can.
All right. Just about a year ago, a devastating flood swept through Mokwa town in Niger State, excuse me, north central Nigeria. And I was one of the journalists to visit the scene on time. And I didn't just visit, I stayed in that community for about 6 days, providing a wall to wall coverage for my organization and providing in depth analysis on what's been happening and the state of the people and the level of humanitarian crisis. I'm telling you, Pfizer, by just being on ground and not going anywhere, we saw that government began to respond appropriately. They started getting a lot of international donors coming in. Of course, there were other international media organizations that came in, BBC, um, Al Jazeera, and other national news stations. In fact, I was in that community, and BBC called me from London, wanting some details, and it was beautiful because I was there. I actually gave them accurate figures, contrary to what they had. So for me, it was a proud moment to see that my work could actually bring such impact to the community.
Oh, that's very interesting. But despite this proud moment that we have in journalism, there's also another aspect of journalism that I would like to go into. So you see, there was some time ago when I was in secondary school, I was telling someone, "Oh, I want to study mass communication and journalism," and then the person immediately tried to stop me, like try to discourage me from going into the course, pointing out the fact that journalists get harassed, ignored, the way they get pushed out of the way sometimes even get assaulted. So my question to you now is that have you ever experienced any of these challenges before?
Okay, so when it comes to being pushed out, I don't think I have, or maybe even if I had, I might have forgotten because of my personality. I'm a very outgoing person. I have very good self-esteem, and so I'm difficult to be pushed out. And by reason of what I do, I already have a preconceived notion when I'm going to the field, and depending on what kind of news I'm going to get. If I know that it's a news where some people are trying to cover things and I need to unearth what they're covering, or if it's a news where the scenario is quite difficult, so I have that my mind prepared from home. So if you push me, I push in some more. So I don't consider that being pushed out. I just find it as consider it as one of the challenges on the field. Every organization, every field, every career path have their own challenges. Talking about being assaulted, maybe for ladies being harassed sexually, it happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. Different organizations. It actually has to do with how you position yourself, and it's a global fight. So it's not just particular to journalism. All right, it's everywhere, even in corporate organizations where you just go to the office every day. Your boss is seeing you and saying you look too beautiful with your scarf on your head. I'm like, excuse me, sir. That too can happen in journalism. It can happen on the field just as it can happen anywhere. So I think by training, we're actually prepared for that and how to overcome that.
So despite all the risks you see in the field of journalism, like you mentioned earlier, you go into field of insecurity. So despite all the risk in that, how do you still survive? What keeps you pushing?
Well, for me, journalism is more than a job; it's a calling for me. I find it as a tool to put my voice out there. I find it as a platform to fulfill purpose. I believe I was called for this. I was born for this. God created me for this. I can't talk about this and not talk about God every time. So all of those things are just challenges. Same way you have challenge working in NNPC or working as a cabin crew in one airline. Just some days ago, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when Arik Air lost one. Arik Air, the flight was en route from Lagos to Port Harcourt, and on board it lost one of its engines and it almost crashed. Thankfully, it didn't crash. My friend was one of the cabin crew. She was a flight attendant on that particular flight.
Oh,
And funny enough, we met on that particular aircraft maybe a year ago. That same aircraft, and we're very good friends. That's a very big risk. If that plane had crashed, it would take the grace of God for her not to lose her life, for her to survive it. I'm just saying there are challenges everywhere,
yes.
but you always want to find purpose, meaning, why are you here? Are you just here for the clout? Are you just here for the job? Are you just here for the money? If that's all you're here for, or just for the fame and popularity or supposed popularity that people think that we have, if that's what you're coming in for, after a while you just get tired. It becomes too normal. These days I walk around town, people see me, they greet me, probably Chenemi Bamaiyi. I'm like, oh, hi.
You're talking about this calling that you have in journalism. That is the passion you have. So, what about for those that are coming into the field because of the money? Is it true that there's no money in journalism?
Please, if you're looking for money, go work somewhere else.
Definitely not in journalism.
Go work somewhere else. But of course, we thank God there's enough to keep body and soul together.
Mm,
And like you need to have financial principles. You need to have a financial plan
mm,
to have financial stability in life. So it's not just some salary. We've
mm,
heard it, for you to be wealthy, you need to have at least 7 different streams of income.
mm,
Yes. So if salary is the only your only source of income, you're going to be poor. You're going to
mm.
be broke. So
There's a
just
saying that goes that when you only survive on your salary, then that means you are just one step away from poverty.
I mean, nothing could be truer because you've got to diversify.
Mm,
So if I depend on my salary alone, it's not going to work.
mm,
All right, just like anybody else. Work, even if you are the MD of NNPC, you can't
mm,
depend on your salary alone. If you do that, you're going to be
mm,
broke at that particular level.
mm.
So that's how you diversify. Dangote is diversifying his assets every day, diversifying his
Yes.
income every day. So don't worry, there's money to keep body and soul going. But if you want to be rich, you have to spread into other areas.
So we have to be diverse.